The Odyssey, Book 9 by Annika, Charlotte, Jenny, and Kendall. The book The Odyssey is about Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, returning home from the Trojan War. Odysseus is the main character in the book, and in the chapter we will be focusing on Odysseus' journey home that takes 10 years, and he faces many challenges along the way. Odysseus also has to outsmart the one-eyed giant Cyclops. Cyclops plays a large part in this chapter because he is a challenge Odysseus has to overcome in order to continue his journey. The chapter begins as Odysseus starts to tell King Alkinoos about his run-in with the Cyclops, and the whole chapter is told from Odysseus' point of view as he retells the story. He begins when he is brought to the shores of Caicon by Zeus's wind, and Odysseus and his men storm the city and kill all the men, enslave the women, and butcher their livestock. Odysseus and his men are eating on the beach of Caicon when they are attacked by a massive army, and many of Odysseus' men are killed, and the rest are forced to run away. Odysseus and his men go back out on the sea, and after a while they find an island.
They land on the island, and Odysseus sends 3 of his men to figure out if there is anyone on the island. The 3 men find the lotus eaters, who offer them sweet flowers, which make them forget about Odysseus and going home to Troy. When Odysseus finally finds them, he has tied them down to the boat to make them stay, and he sets out at sea again. They find an island off the coast of the land of Cyclops that is inhabited with only goats, so they set up a camp. The next morning, Odysseus takes a few of his men and rows to the mainland to see what they can find. They discover a large cave filled with sheep and goats. They decide to eat some because that is the only source of food they have.
They are still eating when Cyclops, the one-eyed giant, returns. Upon seeing them in his home eating his livestock and cheese, Cyclops becomes angry and eats some of Odysseus' men. He then keeps them trapped inside by putting a large stone slab over the cave entrance, which only he is strong enough to move. Cyclops keeps Odysseus and his men captive for another day, eating more and more of Odysseus' companions along the way. While Cyclops goes out during the day to let his sheep graze, Odysseus makes a giant wooden spear out of an olive tree and hides it when Cyclops gets back. Then Odysseus offers Cyclops a drink of sweet alcohol that was a gift from Marin, the keeper of Apollo's groves in Ismaros, and Cyclops becomes extremely drunk. While drunk, Cyclops asks Odysseus his name, to which Odysseus replies, "Nobody. My name is Nobody." Cyclops soon falls asleep, and Odysseus drives the olive tree stake into his eye, making him blind. Cyclops yells out, and his neighbors ask him what is the matter. He says, "Nobody has blinded me. Nobody has hurt me." They laugh and tell him to go back to sleep. The next morning, the blind Cyclops moves the stone slab and pets his sheep as they go out.
To slip by him, Odysseus comes up with a plan to tie 3 sheep together and then tie a man to the underside of the middle sheep. Once all the men are tied this way, Odysseus and his companions sneak out the door, tricking Cyclops into thinking he is letting his sheep out, because he feels their furry backs on the way out. Once he is back at his ship and far enough offshore that the Cyclops cannot get him, Odysseus brags to the Cyclops about how easily he defeated him. Cyclops begins throwing things into the water, causing giant waves, and he prays to Poseidon to never let Odysseus make it home to Ithaca. Then he throws another rock, causing a giant wave that propels Odysseus back to the island where the rest of the men are waiting, only to find that Zeus has destroyed the rest of the ships, killing all of the men on them. Odysseus and his men stay the night once more on the island and continue on their journey.
A formula that often occurs in this chapter is "when the young dawn with her fingertips of rose lit up the world," page 154, or "when the young dawn spread out her fingertips of rose," page 158, and other variations of this phrase. This formula is another way of saying "when morning came" or "when dawn came." Some other figures of speech found in this chapter are similes, which is a type of comparison using like or as, and personification, which is a descriptive phrase that gives a non-human object a human action.
An example of a simile is, "He caught 2 in his hands like squirming puppies," page 152. Some examples of personification are, "We saw a cavern yawning above the water," page 150, and "Fingertips of rose touch the world," page 162.
This chapter of the Odyssey falls under the category of challenges and temptations on the hero's journey, which is a 17-step narrative pattern that is the baseline for many stories and myths. The steps of the hero's journey briefly include call to adventure, threshold, challenges and temptations, revelation, transformation, atonement, and return. This chapter includes many challenges and temptations that Odysseus has to overcome in order to continue on his journey home. Some important themes in this chapter are using brain over brawn, like when Odysseus outsmarts Cyclops, who is much bigger and stronger than him.
And humility, which Odysseus does not show when he taunts Cyclops once he escapes, but he learns his lesson when all of his men are killed and ships are destroyed.